Hello everyone, Ben Shute here. Now if you saw the title to this video, you might have found it a little bit perplexing. Counterpoint is the soul of expression. And the reason it might be a little perplexing at first is because we tend to think of counterpoint as being something very academic, the skill of combining multiple voices correctly. For me though, the heart and soul of counterpoint is not merely combining voices in an academic way. The heart and soul of counterpoint is the control of dissonance and release between two or more voices. So now if you've studied music a bit, you may be aware that there are different ways in which different dissonance is used in music. Sometimes it falls off the beat. It's just a passing dissonance. The main sonority is consonants, and then maybe there's a little run that passes through some dissonant notes. But then there's another class, I should say, of usage of dissonance that are emphasized. So you might have a suspension where the dissonant note is prepared in advance and held until it's made dissonant on a strong beat. Or you might have an appoggiatura where you leap to a dissonance on a strong beat before resolving it. And in these patterns of tension and release, we find a lot of the heart and soul of the expressive content of the music we play. But also, when we bring out these emphasized dissonances that fall on the beats, what we also are doing is we're illuminating the metrical hierarchy, right? Because if we bring out the dissonance on the strong beat and its resolution on a weaker beat, by definition, then we're illuminating the strong and weak beats inherent within the metrical hierarchy that we have in Western music. So by tapping into these patterns of emphasized dissonance and release, we're not only heightening our expression of the music, but we're also illuminating its very structure. So it's a double win in that regard. And as musicians, I feel like we want our goal to be to identify dissonance immediately by its feel, right? We don't want it to just be academic, seeing it on the page, or even oral, even hearing is, oh, that's a fourth going to a third, oh, that's a seventh going to a sixth. First thing I think we want to, the most immediate impact I think it should have on us and our listeners, but in order for it to have that impact on our listeners, it really should have that impact on us. The first impact that we want it to have is on our feeling. We want to feel this tension, this dissonance of a seventh resolving to a sixth, or something along those lines, fourth going to a third. But we want to make sure that we're perceiving dissonance by feel, that it hits us deeply in the gut. So as performers, I think when we come to dissonances of these, so we really want to hug that dissonance. We want to really cling to it as if it's speaking deeply to us. Because really, for me at least, I feel like dissonance is what speaks most deeply to the human experience, and that longing that it creates in that moment for resolution. It touches very deeply, I think, on just the nature of human experience in a world where there is brokenness and sadness and injustice, and the longing that we feel for resolution, for things to be made right. So I think even just the usage of dissonance in Western music can really be a microcosm of the human experience. So practically speaking, how do we do that? I think one, perhaps the primary way that I think we still, just as a musical culture, have room to grow in, or maybe it's a matter of returning to, is timing. You can make a note louder, you can make a note softer, but the way you linger in your timing on that dissonance as it goes into the resolution, the heart and soul of whether it's rhetoric or it's speech, good speaking is all about how one uses timing, and music is very much an art of timing. And so I think that your best friend in terms of bringing out these dissonances is to be able to lay on it in terms of timing, stretch it a bit, and resolve it only when it feels that it's ready for that resolution. And in fact, as historical performance practice expands into the romantic era, with many really excellent recordings out there, This is one thing actually that I still tend to miss a little bit. I feel like we too easily fall into a little bit of squareness and can kind of gloss over these poignant dissonances in ways, ironically, that I feel like probably not very historical. I especially find that in music of the Germanic romantic composers, and particularly Brahms for me. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a more sensitive contrapuntist than Brahms. His use of dissonance and releases just can just go straight to the heart. And I think if we can tap into that, it can really take our expression as performers to a new level, um, and in turn then heighten our experience of music, whether we're listening or performing. Um, a great example of this I'm a violinist, so for you violinists out there, a great example of this for me is actually the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, um, because it's we think of it as a very classical piece. We think of it as lyrical, but a little square in its phrasing, and not square in a negative sense, but just very regular in its phrasing. Often in groups of four bars and whatnot. But if you look at the way Mendelssohn uses emphasized dissonances, especially in the way he leaps to them in ways that would not have been allowed in by the book Counterpoint. If you look at the very strict practice of the Renaissance, they would never leap to a dissonance on a strong beat, and that became the basis of textbook counterpoint. But Mendelssohn, um, people like Bach too, but in Mendelssohn's day it's becoming even more so, will just leap to these dissonances on strong beats in order to have this feeling of taking our breath away. And we so easily miss it today, partly because we almost think of Mendelssohn in that time as that's old hat. It just has become almost second nature to us. And then, of course, with the increased use of dissonance in the 20th century, and especially in the 12-tone system, where the whole idea of tension and resolution has been changed from what it always was classically. I think our ears are not as accustomed to the norms of counterpoint as they would have been in Mendelssohn's day, and so Mendelssohn's use of dissonance and his leaping to these emphasized dissonances is not as shocking to us as I think we want it to be. But if you can let yourself be shocked by Mendelssohn's use of counterpoint, the way he leaps to these strong dissonances. Look at, for example, in the violin concerto, the second theme in the first movement, where it goes into G major and then it comes back in E major at the end. But look at how many times he leaps to dissonances against the orchestra part. And I think you'll find that even though Mendelssohn is externally very classical in the sense that he's structurally quite regular, beneath that classical veneer, it's some of the most wildly romantic music that we'll find. It breaks the rules for these poignant, expressive ends. And I think if we can tap into that, whether in the Mendelssohn Concerto or in whatever music we play, I think that can really help us get to new levels of experience and expression in music. So I hope this is something helpful to think about. And as always, happy exploration and happy practicing.